Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to everyone present online on behalf of Flock to Care. We are about to start a panel discussion on a very beautiful rendition of the Bharatiyar song, Theerthak, Karaiyinile. You would have had an opportunity to catch that online. It was launched yesterday. And a beautiful depiction of a woman who goes through different emotions as she experiences her absence, from the company of her husband. And we'll see how that goes in more detail. And we have with us today Vidya Muthukumar and Bhanupriya Ponarasu. I would like to start the panel discussion with you, Bhanu. I notice you chose Bharatiyar's song, and in general, if you look at Theertha Karaiyinile, it reflects the anguish of a man, depicting the pain he experiences when his lover does not turn up on the banks of the river as promised. Yes. So, and in your choreography, you have used a female dancer to depict the absence of her husband. It's sort of, you flipped it over. So I'm wondering, what was the thought process behind that?
The thought process behind this choreo, when I even picked this song, I didn't want to give a gender biasness to it in any way. I think what stuck out to me the most was you may be whichever gender, but the anguish is the same. So the anguish is the focus, and hence that's why I picked a song like that, and I decided to reverse the roles. Yeah, and I think that gave a much more interesting perspective, because a woman going through anguish, she sees different kinds of anguish and feels different kinds of anguish. The things surrounding her can also trigger that anguish. Likewise for a man as well, it will be very different. So hence I flipped the roles, and this is what it is.
I think it's come out beautifully.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. And yes, because that's the first thing that captures the attention. Theertha Karaiyinile, and then you see the lover, the female, depicting it. It's wonderful. A question to you, Vidya. How was the whole process going through the choreography and emoting and imbibing all the movements and the story behind that theme with Bhanu?
Okay, so I'm a clinical psychologist, and I think for me, a lot of the embodiment was borrowing from the emotions of my clients, I think, in a lot of ways. So during the process, because when clients bring you their emotions, they bring it to you raw. So you really feel what they feel. You can feel their pain as a therapist. So I think on some levels, that kind of helped. And of course, Bhanu's guidance in terms of shaping that to be a more expressive, artistic form, I think that was very helpful.
Yeah, and the emotions, I think, came out very stark and very beautiful and profound, because the grief is so intense. And you brought out all the colors of grief, if I can say that, all the various emotions a woman goes through. And it's not all just about crying or, feeling desolate, right?
Right.
There are moments of happiness I saw you recollect when you were thinking of your husband, and moments when, especially when you picked up the flower, there was a slight smile, and then you went on to, this reminds me.
Yeah, so micro expressions.
Yeah.
I think juxtaposing that to grief in itself, just grief, right? Losing anybody close to you, or even losing something that's very important to you. People always undergo grief, and grief is not something that is static. It's not just about sadness. There's anger. There is a sense of why, and if only, it's like a bargaining, like if only I had this, if only that happened, that sort of thing. So it's always, a mix of emotions, and it's always like, back and forth. It's never like a linear process with grief. So, I think that's something that we tried to bring out here, because the heroine in the story does go through that, sense of why. And I think in this case, because the grief is owed to something that's so sudden and so painful as suicide, I think it's a lot more complex than it usually is. I mean, as is, it's very complex, and I think this just adds another layer of pain and difficulty that we tried to capture as well.
Oh yeah. So for those of you who who watched that video, very clearly depicted, even for those who don't watch dance on a regular basis, the woman whose husband dies committing suicide, and then she recollects and her questions, why did you leave me? Why did you have to do this? And how she is struck intensely with grief and feeling very desperate, and how she overcomes every emotion layer by layer. It's very, very beautiful, very nicely choreographed as well. I wonder, Banu, what led you to think about suicide and grief of a woman? What led you to this particular choice of the theme?
That's a very interesting question. I think, to be very frank, of course, I think the topic of suicide in society today is there. Everybody sees it or has somehow experienced it, probably heard about it, maybe talked about it a little bit, but no one has really addressed it, in a way that it should be addressed. See, it's usually a topic that's always like, okay, we talk about it, we discuss about it, but there is always some form of hesitance in terms of addressing it, and then, eventually going through the emotions and trying to understand why would someone go through this process, or how does it affect them. So I mean, I've always had those kind of questions for myself. I think the turning point in terms of picking up this theme was when Vidya decided and said, okay, can we do something related to suicide and see if we can raise awareness about it, and that too using a medium of Bharatanatyam. And then I was, oh yes, definitely, why not? Because I think for me, I believe that the art is beyond performance. And the art is a great tool in terms of communication and in terms of addressing very difficult, heavy topics like that. It's like a filter, I'd say, that allows people to kind of process the information in a little bit more softer, gentler, bite-sized manner for them. So hence I was all out for this.
So I think it started off with us wanting to do something about mental health awareness, and then we decided why not, because there's so much stigma and so much taboo still, with regards to, I think, any mental health issues that you can take at hand. But I think suicide in itself, it has always been a oh no and hush hush and let's not talk about it, that sort of thing. So I think we were kind of thinking of the arts as a less confrontational way to bring this message across to people, that and here we are looking at it at an angle of someone who survives, the pain of suicide.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's much less talked about as well, because a lot of times we talk about what led a person to think about suicide or attempt suicide, that sort of thing, but it's much less frequent that we even talk about a survivor. How is it like for the people who are left behind? So I think that is where we drew the inspiration from.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's such a taboo topic. I mean, it has always been there, and it's just that people don't want to face it, don't want to talk about it. If it happens in a family, they try to, push it away, not even grieve about it. At times they think it's so bad, it's so sinful, and there's so much of stigma attached to that whole issue and the whole topic of suicide itself. And also I noticed, when Vidya depicted what the wife goes through, there were moments of happiness, there were moments of a whimsical smile here and there, and then utter sadness and helplessness, and then grief in all its profound intensity coming through. So yes, grief does not have to go through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
You know, it can jump from 1 to 3, 4 to 5, and it's seamless. It goes and comes back as well. It's not a one-way road as such, right?
Yeah.
So did you have all that in mind when you put that into choreography?
I think so the choreographic process for me has been quite interesting actually for this particular piece, because I was hearing a lot of raw, real lived experience, you know, which Vidya has had encounters in terms with her patients, and you know, talking about what they had gone through. So I think that was my main focus in terms of drawing you know, the actual emotion of what people actually go through. And then eventually trying to translate that. So I think, to be honest, I didn't want to structure it, okay, you know, they have to go through this, they have to go through that, this way first, that way first. I think for me it was more of, it was very sporadic, because I thought of the whole idea of a light bulb. It just flickers, right, then it stops, and then it flickers again, then it stops. So I think that's the thought process I had when it came to, you know, the whole idea of anguish and grief and hurt. You know, you will have moments where, yeah, you life still goes on, but then there will be moments, you know, where you just suddenly sink into that moment of sudden grief, because something reminds you of something, you know, and then it just goes on. So I think that was the crux of the choreography, which is why you constantly see like an in and out, flickering kind of a light bulb feel, you know, in terms of the emotion.
I think that came out so well, you know, the audience could really follow in, and it's very profound. It strikes you very close to the heart, and the feelings, the emotions were so clear and vivid that, yeah, you don't realize it, and then in 5 minutes an entire saga, you know, a wave of emotions, very, very well choreographed and very well depicted as well.
Thank you.
Coming to that, you know, if you look at the presentation, you start off by calling a friend and starting a casual talk, a conversation with her, and then you chance upon a flower, which sort of brings back this whole gamut of memories and emotions, and then you go through, and it's clear that it was all going on in your mind,
because the ending was the
exactly, and at the very end you sort of you know, come back to the present moment and sort of carry on with that conversation, forcing a smile on your lips, and that struck me a lot, you know, that was very profound, and sort of made me think, is this how conversations happen? That we are so immersed into the conversation that we hardly notice what the other person's mood is like, or emotions is like, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think the main thing that we try to bring out there is to show that you never know what's going on in someone's mind. You never know, and because we're all complex creatures, humans, right? As it's always, you know, it's always a mask or a facade, or you know, like, okay, I have to behave this way in this situation. There's always these you know, rules or societal norms that's playing in our heads. So you never really know what someone is going through. I mean, I think what strikes me is when Robin Williams ended his life, everybody was like, oh, how come, you know, he was this comic and he made everybody laugh, and how can he do that, you know, that sort of thing. So we never really know what someone is going through, and I guess one of the message, you know, that we try to give in this situation is that it always be kind. Treat someone with compassion, right? Because you never know what they're going through, you never know the pain that they are in actually. So always, you know, just approaching someone with compassion or kindness, you know, can be very, very helpful.
Very true, very true. I think the takeaway message with this is, when you ask that mandatory greeting, you know, how are you? take a minute, take a moment to look at the person's face rather than glancing at your phone or doing something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
So perhaps you might be able to catch that emotion, transient though, and if the person is close enough to you, please do, go ahead and offer help or support in any way or manner that you can to that person. And if you do know the person has gone through some recent grief, I think it would be very good for people around the person to be more sensitive, a little more on the lookout for this person. Because oftentimes, just like the heroine in this rendition, we don't know if she's actually even sought help, or if anyone around her has even recognized that she needs that help to tide over this very difficult period.
I think sensitive is the right word, because I think sometimes people feel that, I need to go and like talk to them, offer them. But sometimes the person on the other end just wants privacy, and that's okay. So I think it's more of letting people know that, hey, if you need me, I'm here. Right? Rather than like being in their space, it's just saying, okay, I'm open to be there for you, and if you need me, you can reach out to me.
Right.
And I think that in itself is very, very helpful, because it acknowledges their pain but also respects their space.
That's true.
And I think that's very important.
That's true. And we have 10 more minutes with my own questions to these two gorgeous ladies before we open up for online questions from the audience as well. But before we go on to that part, I have one more observation to make. Generally when people go through grief, there's an expectation of sorts. From the time of death to say a year, especially with the Indian customs, we have a year-end ceremony, especially the first year. And somehow people seem to go with the idea that 1 year is time enough to deal with that grief, manage it, overcome it, accept it, go through all the stages. And if they see the person grieving beyond that 1 year period, then there's a little less of sympathy and less understanding, and a sort of impatience is shown, and say, you snap out of it, come on, it's been a year, you need to get on with your life. So do you think grief has a timeline, especially when the person who's gone is your loved one, is your beloved, is your better half?
So you never get over it. It's not just get over it, move on, you'll find someone, or like someone loses a child, but you have another one, and no, nobody I think ever feels the void that a loved one has left behind in your life. But it takes time to pick up the pieces and kind of move forward with life in a way, right, that is not so painful. I think, in a way. So the void, I think, that will never be filled, and in some sense, you will always have a triggering memory. I think even in this choreo we've shown, right, when she picks up his clothes, his watch, looking at pictures, so there's always going to be something that triggers a memory. It could be a happy one, it could be a not so happy one, whatever it is, but that person continues to live with you in memories, right, in your memories, in your emotions. But as you pick up the pieces and as you process the grief and as you move on, it becomes that much less difficult and painful to get through your day-to-day in that sense. And it's also about reinvesting in a life that is now without this person. So that in itself takes a lot of effort. So I think it's very hard to put a timeline on grief itself. So it's not the year, and it's, I don't know, lifetime, I guess, sometimes.
I think for me, the phrase that I go is time will tell. Time will tell for, for a process like this, because even as I thought about the choreography, it also made me wonder, people, survivors, or loved ones who has lost someone, another loved one through suicide. You can't really imagine what they'll be going through on a daily basis, because memories, we have good memories, bad memories, but memories that remind them, is like stimulus, it kind of recreates the moment that they had with their loved one, based on, it could be the clothes, it could be things, and thinking about the kind of flashback they would have gone through within that 1 minute or 2 minute, and how they can just quickly sink into that emotion. It's actually quite scary because you can't. There's no solution for that other than if as the day goes by and if you're picking up the same thing, but in the beginning it was very difficult to pick up that shirt that the husband used to wear, but then probably 3 months later if you're able to pick it up but maybe feel a little less sad but still continue to hold a smile, then it gets better and it gets better and it gets better as the time goes. So I think for me it's really time will tell, and I think which is why this in this corridor also you see there's a certain sense of time that I put in terms of taking certain things and eventually she goes back because it's a memory, and if she's able to still think about it and still come back and then continue the conversation, that shows some form of strength, I feel. Yeah. So that strength was also very important to let people know that what, we are with you, but just keep going, don't give up.
That's true, isn't it?
And I think another poignant part of this in the choreography is also the part where she's sort of like taking out all the articles of marriage, like things that symbolize that you're married in that sense. And then suddenly she's like, don't leave me, she reaches out and says, don't leave me. And then we depict it as the spouse coming to say, no, I'm sorry, you've got to let me go. Right? So I think that part is just depicting what usually goes on in the mind of someone, right? So I mean, it's not literal, but in the sense that it's always hard to believe that the person is gone. Right? It's always so hard, and we wish we can say, stay, please stay.
True.
Right? And it's so hard at that point to say it, right?
Very true. And not just, wishing again and again that the person would stay in some form or the other. It's also wondering if you could have done something for that person that eats you up quite significantly, doesn't it? And when this is the case for family members and the better half, the wife or the spouse, even the friends, close friends, colleagues who have worked with that person, they go through their own processing as well, and they also go through all these stages, unable to accept and
like a ripple,
anger and a ripple, and unable to go back to that same office and sit in that cubicle probably next to that person and seeing that empty chair. I guess suicide is so profound and so intense just for any circle, right from the innermost circle. It sort of spreads out, to even if you hear about it, a friend's brother, a friend's colleague, and then it sort of sets another processing of your own, thinking about it. 2 minutes more, and okay, we already had the first question. Okay, I'm just going to read it out to you.
This is from the viewers, isn't it?
Yes, this is the first question from the viewers. What would you say to people who want to show support but are scared to say the wrong thing? And I think the silence that comes with the grief due to suicide is also cause not just of taboo but discomfort in dealing with the heaviness of the pain. I'll leave it open to both of you.
Right, so I think this is a very good question. So just touching on the point that I made earlier, sometimes we don't want to encroach into someone's personal space as well, right? Because grieving is a very, very personal journey. It's a very personal, and even if there's more than one person in the family grieving over the same loved one, everybody feels it in a different way. So it's a very, very personal journey, and we don't want to step into their space, or have it become a case where they have to now reach out and hold us or entertain us per se and that sort of thing. But rather the message that we want to give is, hey, you're supported. Like in whatever ways that you need us to be here, we'll be there for you. So I think leaving it open like that. So this could be like a text message to say, hey, I'm not sure how you're doing, but you know, if you need me, I'm right here. Or I'm here if you need to chat. If you want to go out for a coffee or something, I'm here. So I think giving that I am here for you message is very important.
Yeah.
More than, you know, asking them what happened or telling them, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine and all of that. Because you don't know what that person is going through.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's more of saying, if you want my help or if you want to speak to me, I'm here. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, very true. And I think they get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, especially if the reminiscing happens in their company, and then they're like, okay, now what should I say? You know, should I go with it? Should I say? And most often you find people saying, don't worry, you'll get through it, you'll get over it.
Yeah.
You know, there's that haste to
I think
push
that might
the
be
person.
frustrating for whoever's. I mean, all good intentions,
Yeah.
but it would be frustrating because how do I get over losing someone like that? That's so
Exactly.
important.
Exactly.
So get over it might not be very validating, but rather saying something like, you know, I know that you're probably in a lot of pain, and I'm here if you need me.
Exactly.
You know, in whatever
Yeah.
ways.
So
I think that would be helpful.
there are people, you have the answer. You could send a text message, you could just be there, or probably even drop in once in a while. You know, drop in.
Let them know first.
Yeah, of course.
If they are willing to take visitors.
Because sometimes the grief can be so debilitating that it would be very difficult for the person to even pick up the phone and type that short message and say, yes, I would like to. Because again, there's a stigma of what would so-and-so think about me, can I step out, is it too soon, is it okay, so many things to consider for the person in distress, for the suicide survivors. So yes, please be there for the person. Just one other thing, I was in between before the next question pops up. I noticed that both of you have your own institutes.
Yes.
You have Mandala Wellness and Psychology Services, and you have Mandala Arts. So is there, did you two decide to do that? Like you have a common name in your...
Okay, you want to go first since you started first?
Well, so I think that I started Mandala Arts first, I think in September 2019. So I think the purpose of starting that was when I just really wanted my own space to explore, create, and establish my own idea of, how the arts can be used to help and impact the community a little bit more. So hence I started out Mandala Arts, and then came...
Yeah, okay. So Banu is my dance guru, my dance teacher, right? So she was telling me about like how she started Mandala and all that, and I thought the vision was very beautiful. The vision of having a space for yourself, you know, a safe space. And when I started off my private practice, Mandala Psychology, right? Mandala Wellness and Psychology practice, I thought, why not? And also Mandala has a lot of links within the psychology world as well. Like if you look at works of Carl Jung, he talks a lot about the mandala and the psyche and what it means and all that. So I thought, you know, it was quite apt. And we also had on the background this idea, which I think sparked to where we are today, that we would collaborate on, you know, mental health and topics that are like people don't talk about, you know, taboos. And we're here to break, Mandala is here to break those taboos and to bring messages that people need to hear about, I think, but in a way that is more palatable.
Exactly. So I think the idea of Mandala itself, when I think the name, also we wanted to give it a much more holistic name. You know, a name that also brings a certain sense of comfort, holistic moments, space, and the constant, constant gathering of people, like-minded people together in one space, you know, for us to do thought-provoking work. That's how I see it.
Exploratory,
Thought-provoking, experimenting.
So there's more to come.
There's more to come.
Wonderful, looking forward to it. We have the next question. not just dance, the other arts as well, how much of an impact do these platforms have with regards to mental health and mental well-being?
Okay, so when it comes to arts in general, there's many forms. And I think this really depends on how individual perceive the arts.
That's true.
So if let's say one person A decides to perceive the arts as, okay, yeah, I'm just going to perform and this is why I'm learning the arts and this is what it is, then yeah, that would be the route. If person B perceives that, okay, performance is not really my thing, but let's just say, I have this idea where I want to do something with my art. My art can help me with my life in terms of software skills, hardware skills, things like that. So then we pursue the art in a different way. So the reason why I'm giving these two examples is each individual have different ideologies of why they want to pick up an art form. And it is that foundation idea, the foundational idea that they have, is the one that will spur into what it can be. So what I'm trying to say here is actually the art itself has the potential to do many things. It is how we perceive and it is how we use it as a tool. So I'll give you one example. In the previous place that I used to work with, they use a lot of applied theatre, applied drama. And applied work is basically to see how we can go in to use drama or theatre as a tool to help with probably rehabilitation process, to help with probably getting better, it helps with counselling, to help with many ways of healing and recovering. And like that, it has sprung up into its own industry where there are a lot of applied practitioners out there. So I think that itself was something that I saw and I was like, wow, there is actually a community like that. And that was what made me want to be part of something like that, because my principle or belief is at least the fact that the arts can go beyond the performance arena and the arts can impact the society directly and not indirectly. And hence, I think there are many ways that art forms can help. It's just whether we do our research well and whether and also it depends on how we perceive it. And also right now the up and coming industry that we have is arts therapy, arts and health therapy, and there's so many therapies that are coming out relating to the arts. So again, it's out there, it's just that we got to dive in and look into it.
That's true. That's true.
I think just to add on, arts in itself is a form of expression. Whether you're painting, whether you're dancing, whether you're clay molding, whatever you're doing, right? There is a connection between you and the arts as an extension of you.
Yes.
Right? So in that aspect, the process that you're going through can be expressed or can even be organized by the art modality that you're using. So as a psychotherapist myself, sometimes what I find is that talking about something can be very scary or can be too distressing for clients. But for those same clients, when you give them an alternative modality, that emotion or that thought or the experiences flows a bit more freely with lesser inhibitions, I would say. So I mean, as Banu pointed out, I mean, art therapy is a big area, up and coming as well. There are a lot of art therapists who are registered and there's a body regulating, so art therapy is up and coming. There's also music therapy and drama therapy and things to the extension. So mental health in itself, we're not limited to just psychotherapy, although psychotherapy is one that is at the forefront and there's we have a lot of research and there's a lot of practitioners and all of that. But arts as an expression or as a modality itself, I think it's something that's very important for us to recognize.
It is. Yeah. I guess it's a tool that you can use it in whichever direction you want to.
Absolutely.
Art therapy as an up and coming therapy, as a recent, kind of approach to mental health is there. But if you look at yesteryears, days of yore, for example, like my background with Kuchipudi was used as a social platform to bring up issues and present it in the form of a drama when they were too scared to talk in front of the chief, the village chief, so they would just present it as a drama in front of the whole village and sort of make make it, public, make it loud, but in a very, very beautiful manner. So art depends on the hands of the user, I guess.
Absolutely,
Right?
yes, yeah.
Right. Just one more. We are at 2:10 now, so I guess we can take this question. How far is our community ready to accept a second phase of life, to move forward with another person after grief?
Ooh.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
do you think there's still a little more? Do you think a community is still within the cultural or social cocoon as still continues to live in the past? So my question isn't relative to immediate family members' acceptance of allowing the affected party to move on.
Wow, okay. Okay, so in some sense, I think it's about respecting someone as an individual. Because when we see a person, we always see them as a mother or a father or a husband or a wife or a daughter-in-law. So we always attach a role to the person, right? But if you look at them as individuals and respect them for their own needs, wants, and wishes, I think it will be a lot easier for people to accept them in whatever ways, whatever moving on means, right? And to a large extent, it's not wrong for someone-to-one companionship, right? So if it means moving on after the passing of a spouse, and you want companionship in certain ways, accepting that would be looking at them as an individual and saying, hey, they have a right to live the life the way they want it to as well, right? So I think it's more about looking at that. I'm not so sure about, addressing current community status.
I think this is just my personal opinion. I mean, with the question itself, I think it's a very valid question. But I think one of the things that we are all so glued to, or at least so used to, is to function in a certain form of structure in society. If you are a teacher, this is how you should be. If you are a mother, this is how you should be. If you are a dancer, this is how you should be. But they fail to realize that at the end of the day, these are just roles, like what Vidya had mentioned. So I think a second lease of life is definitely possible. And it's time that people start living for themselves rather than for the roles, and start breaking the structure that was set upon by our predecessors. In terms of this is how it should be and this is how you should be.
Very true.
Rather than the should be, maybe, and could be. Just ask yourself, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want
What
to do.
speaks to me, what resonates to me.
What resonates to you, what makes sense to you, what is rational, what is very rational to you. So I think it all goes back to, let's break the structure, and if a second lease of life is possible and that's the way of moving on, then yes,
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, and especially in today's world, we are in the post-COVID or mid-COVID phase still, right? And the entire world has gone through a sea of change. Lifestyles have gone through a sea of change, and this past year has seen so many talks and conferences and discussions about mental health awareness and how people are coping with grief, with this COVID taking away so many loved members in our community, in our family. And I guess then we could take this as a start. We have a dance rendition showing grief, suicide, addressing it in very bold and profound terms. And it's up to us, each one of us, to sort of come forward and say, it is okay to carry on, and the survivor needs to live. The survivor does not have to die a death, figuratively, so to speak, sort of not stop living from now on, but rather help them, be there for them, support them, and walk along with them, if you can. And that sort of brings our panel discussion today to a close. Thank you very much for being there. Thank you for all the lovely questions. Thank you again from Club to Care, and thank you, Banu and Vidya. It was a wonderful afternoon.
I think we want to thank Club to Care for their support and giving us this platform to reach people as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.